Stand by.
Is this on YouTube too?
Sometimes I guess, sometimes it is.
3, 2, 1.
Good morning and welcome to the Mayor's Update. I'm William Kay, today's moderator. And you're listening to KBBG 88.1 FM Waterloo. And now I am pleased to introduce Waterloo's Mayor, the Honorable Buck Clark. Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
William, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
It's good, and we're enjoying some warm weather, which I'm sure you're responsible for.
Yeah, absolutely. I requested that, and actually, though, if you haven't been outside recently, it is getting a little chillier. When I stepped out of the car out in the parking lot, there's a little glaze right there. So, but yeah, you're right. It reminded me, and I'm getting way off topic here, but I was in Kansas City this past weekend. My grandson had a hockey tournament down there. It was 66 degrees on Saturday in Kansas City, and I thought, okay, this is the kind of weather that I like in January. So
We're a little bit too far north.
yeah.
You know, and mentioned just as a side on that, when we have weather like this, it really helps our budget, doesn't it?
It does to some extent, yeah, and I get asked that question a lot, William, and I need to always kind of clarify it, because we have to buy salt, period. So we have the salt. Our savings don't necessarily come in the form of buying that kind of stuff, but it comes in the form of overtime. When a snow event happens, our drivers go to work at whatever time they go to work, and work 24 hours a day and rotating shifts until the snow's gone. So our overtime budget takes a licking when we have snow events, particularly one after another, and it's really helpful when we don't have them to our overtime budget.
Well, and two things. One is the major snowstorms seem to fall on Saturday and Sunday for some reason.
Unbelievable. And Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving and all those kind of holidays. And the major snowstorms, quite honestly, aren't as big of an issue to us as the 3 or 4 inchers are when we have one after another. If we have a 3-incher on Monday, and then have a 3-incher on Wednesday, then have a 3-incher on Friday or Saturday, our guys never go home. I mean, they do go home because they have to sleep. But my point being, those are killers.
They are, and of course, even like today, where your temperature hovers around 32 and you've got drizzle, you do have to prepare the roads so that we don't have slick intersections, that sort of thing.
And that takes time and money.
Yes, it does. So, well, we'll look for a better budget year this year if we can control the weather. Well, and speaking of some different things, we were talking last time about the House of Hope project, and maybe you could that's been in the news and so forth. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how that's going.
Okay. I would be glad to, because I think there probably is some confusion for the folks that have been paying attention on that. And it's going to take me a couple of minutes, William, so bear with me. But the house that's in particular question is on East 3rd Street. It's at 519 East 3rd Street. That particular house, it's been several months, maybe even over a year probably, since the city took ownership of that house through our 657A process. It was dilapidated, it was unoccupied, and it was an eyesore and blight. So we went through the 657A process, we took possession of that, we took ownership of it, and when we did, we had a gentleman approach us, Judge Stout, who was actually a district court judge in the system here in Blackhawk County, who requested the authority to go in and take all of the trim and the woodwork that's in that house, which is actually in pretty good shape. He wanted to be able to go and remove that, and then at his cost he would demolish it. So it was a perfect situation that was taken in front of the council, and the council approved that for that residence, for 519 East 3rd Street. And it kind of went off of our radar for another few months, and Judge Stout attempted to do what he had said he was going to do, and actually pretty quickly realized that was way too big of a project for him to undertake, he and his wife, to start doing that. So he got cold feet on that project and came back to the city council and asked to reverse that decision, asked to get out of the contract, and the council allowed that, and that house at 519 East 3rd Street came back into the possession of the city. So we now own a dilapidated, blighted house that we acquired through 657A with all full intentions of demolishing it, which the council had already approved to do. In that median time, we became aware that the lot adjoining the CVS drugstore at Mullen and Franklin, or 63 and Franklin, 63 and whatever, Franklin.
Yep.
Yeah, that lot that's adjoined that was an irregularly shaped lot because of the House of Hope building that sits on the northeast corner. There's a brick building there that has, I think, 8 different
I think that's
houses.
correct.
I think it's an 8-plex. That has become a burden on the House of Hope. It's labor intensive. It's kind of like the old money pit, situation where they're constantly fixing the electricity or the plumbing or the roof or doors are falling off or something. So the city actually approached the House of Hope. I said, would you sell that? House of Hope said, you know what, we would love to sell that, but we need another facility. The city says, okay, we've got another facility. We've got an empty house that actually sits at 519 East 3rd Street. Ironically, the backyard of 519 East 3rd Street and their present facility on Walnut Street adjoin each other. House of Hope and our staff got together and thought that this was a match made in heaven. We would pay to tear down the old house on 519 East 3rd. They would build a new facility at that location, fence in the backyards, and they would have a regular campus there to adjoin the facility that they have. It was a perfect scenario. Then we would buy the brick house, we would tear that down, and we would then have a nice square lot to market for a retail development next to the CVS lot. It was a perfect situation. Until we got a council person involved, and then until we took it back to council, and Councilman Morrissey, God bless him, is a historical preservation advocate, and thought that there was an opportunity to save that house on East 3rd Street. At that point, JSA Development and David Deeds got involved. They thought that they could save that house rather than tear it down. And I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I understand their direction on that. And they were able to stop the project in favor of JSA Development taking ownership of that house, rehabilitating it, applying for a historic district in that area, getting historic tax credits, and saving that house. Council, we haven't taken it to council for formal approval. We will have to get a development agreement from JSA to see if that gets approved by the council, but they have, for the time being, stopped the city from moving forward in demolishing the house, going through with our original plans with House of Hope. I think that that's unfortunate, but that's the way the system works, and it wouldn't have been my choice, but it is the choice that's been made. So it looks as though the council is going to move forward with the JSA development plan to rehabilitate 519 East 3rd Street, make that into a duplex, which I also have some concerns about, quite honestly, but the House of Hope is kind of left holding this bag at this point.
Yeah, it does seem unfair, and I've always wondered why some of these historical homes aren't preserved 5 or 6 years after they're abandoned instead of 20 years later when the damage is far greater.
Yeah.
We had this problem with the Bickle House,
Yeah.
as you recall, that
Yeah.
everybody wanted to save that, but it was so dilapidated that nobody could really afford to do it. And this means that House of Hope will retain that brick eightplex.
They will retain the eightplex brick building for at least for the time being, and they will stay at their present location on Walnut Street. Now, there are some council people that are committed to finding them, quote, another suitable location. The House of Hope has been pretty emphatic that they don't want to move, they want to stay right where they are. But I think that there will be some efforts made to try to find them another location if they are interested in moving to another
So
location.
one of the things people don't always realize is that when you relocate, it's not just what the new building costs and what the old building you got for it, there's a cost to moving.
Yeah.
Utility hookups and transportation of materials and that sort of thing. So it's not quite as simple as it may seem.
There's a familiarity, if I said that word right, familiarity.
You did.
with locations too, Bill. And the House of Hope location, where they are now, works very well for them. It's close to downtown, it's close to the bus route, it's close to CVS Pharmacy. It's in a relatively commercial district, so they're not bothering, you know, and I hate to use the word bother, because they're not a bother, but it's not, it's a good fit for that neighborhood, and we thought, we being me and the staff, thought this arrangement that we had put together was a very good fit. But, you know, having said all of that, that's my opinion. The council has a different one, and when you get 4 council people that agree on something, then they have complete authority, and it appears as though that's the way this is going, and I don't begrudge anybody that, even though I disagree with it.
Well, I can understand that. I thought there was only 2 council people that were for the proposal with JSA.
Well, we'll see. When the development agreement comes in front of the council, we'll see.
Okay.
I don't know.
So there's still a chance it could go through as you intended, or we could have a renovation of that historic residence at 592.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which way it'll
When do you think that'll come up in council?
go. I think relatively soon.
Okay, so the next 2 weeks maybe.
Maybe. Relatively soon would be probably within the next 30 days at least.
You know, it is interesting about that location because it is close to downtown. You've got the drugstore, as you say. You've got the parks.
Mhm.
You can walk down for any of the festivals or entertainments going down there. And it's all within a very easy walking distance.
Yeah. And the bus route is important. It's close to the bus route.
And I think that whole area, that's the Walnut District, is actually kind of upgrading, isn't it?
Oh, tremendously so. And our argument has been that, you know, there's a group of historic preservation folks that do great work in the city, by the way, and I don't want to in any way disparage that group of folks that's doing that. But our suggestion and our hope was that they would take Walnut Street itself and go north from there in what would be the real Walnut neighborhood that has all of the old stately historic residences in them, and work in that neighborhood. And then south of Walnut, which is where the 519 East 3rd Street is and where the House of Hope is, would be more of a commercial district. And we think that that's more appropriate. We, again, when I say we, I mean me and the planning staff.
Well, I noticed too, if you go a little bit north of there, there's some big homes there that are all kind of boarded up and
Yeah.
peeling sides.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of rehabilitation that can be done there without messing with 519 East 3rd Street.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that's what we'd like to see. So we'd like to see the sprucing up of the community
Yeah.
and the preservation of things that have some meaning to us and
Yeah.
history to us.
Well, if the effort could be put forth to rehabilitate and make historic the Walnut neighborhood, which would be, the south boundary would be Walnut Street,
Mhm.
I think they'd get overwhelming support from everybody involved with that. The rub comes with this one particular house.
Yes, that's too bad. Well, it'll be resolved by the end of, not the month or 2 months from now, it'll all be
It
resolved.
will be, and you know, and again, Bill, if the folks are listening to this, I wanna make sure that I don't leave any doubt in anybody's mind that I'm not disparaging anybody, and everybody is entitled to their opinion and the way things go. And while I have mine, council members have theirs, and they're entitled to that, and this process is actually working just like it should. You know, people have input, people have different ideas, and they bring them forth and they vet them, and, you know, I win some and I lose some. This particular one, at this point, it appears as though I'm being overridden, and that's the way the process should work.
Now, is the Historic Preservation Commission looking at other homes in that area to sort of designate them as historic?
I don't know, is my answer. I know at one point that the group, and this isn't necessarily the Historic Preservation Commission as we know it,
Mhm.
which has oversight over Highland and other districts. This is a group of citizens who are interested in preserving history. There's kind of a difference there. This group, I think, are looking in a two-pronged focus. They're looking at making the district a historic district, and they're also interested in making application to make this one residence designated as a historic residence. So I'm not sure in the end which way they're gonna go.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know that as you start to say, look at other dilapidated homes, that you don't have the same situation.
Well, you would have the same situation, exactly the same situation. So it seems to make sense that they would look at a geographical area and make it a historical district. Therefore, everything in that district would become historical and would be eligible, quite frankly, for historic tax credits, which is a big deal when you start talking about renovating some of these old buildings. It's just almost impossible to do financially unless you really have unlimited resources and don't care that you're going to put an inordinate amount of money into a facility or into a building and never recoup that.
Unless you're eligible for grants or some sort of.
Right, unless you're eligible for those grants and the tax credits.
One final comment I'd like to make is that Highway 63 is being renovated, which I think is going to have some benefits for that area too. It'd be much nicer, much better access, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, and there again, the irony of your comment there, we had a meeting last night. Or not, we didn't have a meeting, but at the council meeting last night, there was a group of people representing the railroad and the Complete Streets, a group of folks who just wanted to reiterate and advocate for, as the DOT redoes 63, it's apparent that they're not going to do the split grade where right now the underpass goes under the railroad on 63. The new design, the railroad, the highway will go over the railroad. And there has been considerable debate about whether to put a walk path, bike path, pedestrian access across that bridge. DOT at this point is not willing to fund that. They have taken the position that they're there to build a road, not to build a pedestrian way or a walkway or a bike path or provide lighting or fences or anything else. So that's an issue, and it's becoming more of an issue as we get closer to that becoming a reality.
Well, that is interesting because I thought that there was the, some sort of alternate transportation grants that went with the new highway building. If you go down even like 330 down to Des Moines, they have bike paths along that. I've never seen anybody on one, but that was apparently part of that, that whole project.
Well, from my understanding, Bill, and again, my understanding could be all wet on this thing, is that the DOT has the ability to include amenities such as those in projects. They have chosen not to do that in this project. That's my understanding. And that if we would like, and we would like, certainly, to have a pedestrian access or ability or walkways and bikeways to go along with that, then we're going to have to fund it. They'll build it, but we have to fund it. And it doesn't make any sense at all to have that brand new overpass there, and you have an at-grade crossing, which would then mean if there's a train sitting there for however long it sits there, you're not going to be able to get from one side to the other.
Well, and of course, Cedar Falls built a bridge across 218, basically for pedestrians and bikes, and
yeah.
I'm sure that was quite an investment.
Yeah, it did, and we will have lots of conversations as time goes on about that particular project. But the statement that you made that 63 being rebuilt is going to make a huge difference could not be more accurate. When we get that, when the DOT, when we get it done, when that's finished from, well, that's within the city, from Logan Avenue to, I think Jefferson is the termination spot on the south side, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible for retail, commercial development, residential development all along that corridor. It's going to be pretty spiffy, and the city is critically aware of our need to make sure that is visually acceptable, for lack of a better word. It's an entrance to our city from the north, and we want it to be inviting and to look nice, and it hasn't forever.
No, that's right, visual appeal.
Yeah.
I remember my first impression of Waterloo when I drove through it in about 1970.
Yeah.
It's quite different now.
Yeah.
it didn't have any visual appeal at
Yeah.
all. But
Yeah.
that was changed. I just want to say that if you've just joined us, you're listening to the Mayor's Update. We're speaking to the Honorable Mayor Buck Clark, and I'm William Kay, your host. And since we're on this theme, let's talk a little bit about maybe what's happening with Chamberlain and the Rath, the brownfield sites.
Okay. Well, we have many brownfield sites. Chamberlain specifically, Bill, you and I talked about it before we went on the air. I was a little surprised, taken aback, if you will, that there was a letter to the editor in the last few days in the Courier that asked when the city's gonna clean up the Chamberlain site. And I immediately thought, boy, that person hasn't driven by the Chamberlain site recently. There is nothing at the Chamberlain site. It is cleaned up, it's gone. You know, we still are dealing with the contamination of that site. But as far as the buildings and the slabs and the concrete and any semblance of there used to be a factory there, that's gone. So that site is cleared up. Now, the other brownfield site that we dealt with for eons is the old construction machinery site where our new public works building is now, on just off of Martin Luther King Boulevard there by the railroad tracks. You know, that is just an incredible success story, where we took, and that came through much assistance from the state and other grants. It's an incredible rehabilitation of a very contaminated site. It's a very much a success story. As is the Human Service Campus, where the women's facility, the new Operation Threshold, and the food bank is now. Fabulous rehabilitation of the contaminated site. The Raft packing site, we're continuing to, not we, that's all private development there, but Crystal Ice is doing some great things on that site. And as they go, we help, and we do have to help in some decontamination of that site. The old Raft building, I'm happy to say, if anybody's driven by there, there's now a security fence up around that developer is actually moving forward, albeit slowly, replacing windows in there, and there is a commitment by that developer to eventually make that into a Class A office space. And I think that will happen. In my lifetime, I think that will happen.
Yeah, I know they had problems, I think, with asbestos, and it took some time
They
to
did.
clean that building up.
Yeah.
And I know that they need to provide a heating plant, I suspect, for it.
I suspect, you know, I'm not privileged to all of the mechanical issues in that building. And since I've been mayor, it's just been an old dilapidated building sitting there. So I'm just happy to see some positive activity going on.
And fortunately, the brickwork and the structure of the building is pretty sound. So.
Oh, and it's incredibly historic, as we're talking about historic buildings. My gosh, I don't know, that thing is, that's got memories to beat the band in there, so. And the TechWorks site, you know, is something that's another brownfield site, the old Deere site down there, Bill. And as I mentioned to you when I came in right off the bat, there is a meeting, we've talked about that now. That was one of the first meetings I had when I took office 5 years ago, 5 years and a month ago now, was about the TechWorks project. So that's been going on for a long time. It will come to fruition, it will happen, and it will be an integral part of Waterloo when that thing is developed to coincide with the John Deere Museum, which I think you want to talk about. That's another brownfield site that will hopefully very soon we'll start seeing progress there. That will be a real success story.
Yeah, I just want to mention, John Deere attracts a lot of people who are customers or people who are just interested in agriculture, because the Northeast site is one of the largest tourist attractions maybe in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Along with the people that come from all over the world to take a look at what we're doing here with their dealers and farmers from various places and anywhere in the world that come to see that. The museum, of course, is going to be a big draw for them and for everybody else. And it's right there next to the TechWorks, which John Deere will be using as a training center, I suspect. So you'll have a hotel where people who are coming in for business with John Deere can stay, and a restaurant apparently that'll be pretty nice as planned.
Yeah.
So that's really something exciting to look forward to.
And you just gave my speech for me, because it is. I mean, this project is really tied at the hips with the John Deere plant right there. Not that there's any kind of a financial or monetary or whatever contract there, but what the folks at TechWorks are doing is building on the success of John Deere, the success of John Deere in Waterloo, the commitment by John Deere to add hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to that plant, And to build that museum, which tells the story of John Deere in Waterloo, you're right, there are innumerable number of people that come to Waterloo to visit John Deere, to be trained by John Deere, to go to work at John Deere, all kinds of things. That TechWorks campus will just, whew, when it gets finished, it's going to be amazing.
And as it starts to, it'll be kind of a logarithmic improvement. It is very slow to start,
Yeah.
but as it starts to gain momentum, it'll be quickly
Yeah.
improved.
And I think it will, and I think the slow to start part is just about over. I think that's been the last 5 years, and once you see the first shovel of dirt turned on that Tech 2 project, which is the big building that kind of faces the highway that's going to be the hotel and the training center, that's going to go very quickly. And once that happens, this thing is going to be snowball to be big.
And I might add too, that the infrastructure set up around that, the highways now around that
Yeah.
building are all in very good shape and make
Yeah.
everything very accessible.
Well, and some of that was actually built for the TechWorks
Mhm.
campus, that extension of, what is it, Commercial?
Commercial.
Yeah, the Commercial Street extension, thank you. Yeah, you were moderating when we were talking about that, but anyway, that was built for the TechWorks campus. So there's been hundreds of thousands of man-hours put into that project, and it'll happen.
Well, we've got very little time left, but maybe you could just talk about the crows for a
The
minute.
crows. I've talked about the crows till I'm black in the face, I think. And I always tell the story that I was in Des Moines not too long ago, in December, and downtown Des Moines looks just like in front of morgues in downtown Waterloo. The crows are a very intelligent bird, everybody knows that, they're very smart, they are familial, they do what they do, they come to Waterloo in the early winter, they make a huge mess while they're here, and then they leave in the late winter. We have tried all kinds of methods and have been pretty successful in moving them from one spot to another, but we can't get rid of them. We just can't.
Well, sometimes nature is a little bit overwhelming to us.
Yes, yes.
Well, that's about all we have time for. We've been talking to Mayor Buck Clark, and as usual, thank you so much for being here and spending this time with us and talking about these, I think, really important issues that were going on in our city.
It's fun.
This has been the Mayor's Update. I'm William Kay, and you've been listening to KBBG 88.1 FM Waterloo. And thank you out there for listening. Be sure to take an active interest in what's going on in your city. You can watch the meetings available on YouTube or Public Access TV, or keep informed by reading the newspaper. If you have concerns or questions, be sure to contact your council representatives or the appropriate city department. Information can be found on www.ci.waterloo.ia.us or search for the City of Waterloo, Iowa. And by the way, put Iowa in there and you'll get Ontario. This is a participatory government, so please evaluate the issues, discuss them with your friends and family and others, and make your concerns known. It's your right, it's your privilege, and your duty. And just a final note, we have underwriters that support this public radio station, so be sure to thank them for their support. Good day.
Thanks, William. You know what we need to start talking about, and it's really